Hey everybody, it's Gianmichael Salvato, and I just wanted to do this video. I've been actually trying to coordinate doing this video to kind of kick off the Inner Alchemy program once again for quite a while now. And we're finally moved into the new place. We're finally starting to get unpacked. So I thought today would be a great time to talk about the inconvenient truth about Italian witchcraft, Strega, and the gatekeepers, and maybe address some of the comments that we've seen from time to time from some of the folks who just can't help themselves, including some of the folks who like to pretend that they're in other parts of the world than where their IP address actually shows up. So more on that when we get back. Alchemy. And welcome back. And I see that we've got some folks that are new tuning in. So welcome. We do ask that if you find the material that we share here useful or valuable, we thank you in advance for passing it along to some of the folks you think we might vibe with. And I'm going to try and move my camera just a little bit so that I can look into the camera and still watch the monitor at the same time, so that I have comments up on the screen. Anyway, we thank you. So the reason for, let's start about with the reason for this. There have been a number of folks who know that I've been a lifelong practitioner of the craft, have either read some of the 10 different books that I've written or attended workshops or things like that, who have discovered my YouTube channel. And on that YouTube channel, they've seen the series that I've done on Italian folk magic and witchcraft. And to my surprise, it's gotten some folks really twisted. And those folks generally fall into, I would say, two different categories, possibly three. One category is the category of folks who come from the neo-pagan 20th century pop culture, if you will, witchcraft communities, who think that somehow that the teachings that I'm sharing disrespect their traditions. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today too, because it's very important to me that folks understand that there is no disrespect, not even for traditions that I might think are just crazy new age pop culture rubbish. There's still an element of respect that each practitioner, each person deserves respect to follow the path or the tradition that works for them. So we're going to talk about that. The other group of people are people who come from either one of two groups, either the authentic Italian practice of folk magic and witchcraft, some of whom either actually do live in Italy or claim to live in Italy or used to live in Italy. Some of them are first generation Americans, either somewhere in North America, Canadians or US residents. And the other group are people who belong to another one of those neo-pagan 20th century pop culture traditions known as Strega, which was the brainchild of Raven Grimassi, and later joined in the efforts to promulgate this 20th century completely made up religion by people like Laurie Bruno, who jumped on board, and essentially that is a tradition that is little more than Wicca with Italian herbs and seasonings. So I'm not going to talk too much about that because I've done videos about that, about what Strega actually is. But let's back up and talk first about the relationship that I have with the pagan community. I don't consider myself to be a pagan. And the reason for that is very simple. First of all, there are no pagans in the modern world. There are neo-pagans, there are reconstructionists, but there are no actual pagans. There are no pagan religions that survived intact per se from antiquity. So neo-pagans and pagans share one thing alike, and that is a worship of a god or goddess or gods and goddesses. And I don't worship anyone or anything. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't have relationships with and work as an ally with some of the very same spiritual energies, archetypes, beings, however you want to perceive them, as some of my pagan friends. So I work with the energy of Hecate. I work with the energy of Lucifer. I work with the energy of the Divine Mother and the Divine Father. The difference is I don't worship gods or goddesses. I am an atheist when it comes to religion. I have absolutely no use whatsoever for religion, but I will defend anybody's right to practice a religion that works for them. I simply find religious superstition to be unnecessary and without merit or value in my own path. And so that's one of the really important foundational concepts that I want to share, is that just because religion is toxic to me, just because I find no value in worshiping gods and goddesses, I find no value in religious superstitions, doesn't mean that I don't believe that there can be value for someone else. And it certainly doesn't mean that somebody who does find value in those approaches to spirituality, it deserves any less respect or any less protection to speak their mind or any less love and affection as anyone who doesn't. So that for me is really important. And I want to thank folks who are starting to comment and let us know that they're watching and that this really resonates with them. We're really grateful that the message is landing well. So my understanding, my background as an anthropologist, my background as a lifelong practitioner of the craft, dictates to me, based on experience, that there has always been in antiquity a separation between religion and the practice of the craft. Now, that separation is in its form. So witchcraft and magic were a separate practice from the gathering in the boschetti, in the groves of covens, if you will, gatherings of witches who honor and worship the god and goddess. So they were two separate things. Now, in that worship of the god and goddess, there were often witches involved. There were often bakers involved. There were often butchers involved. And so we have to, just as we would go to a modern day church, if somebody visited here from another planet, they went to a Catholic church and they saw nuns. Now, they may believe that gathering, if all they saw in the room were nuns, that was a gathering of nuns, and that Catholic churches were places where nuns gathered. But if they stayed long enough and actually got to understand the culture, then they would recognize that there were nuns there, there were car salespeople there, there were realtors there, there were teachers there, there were mothers and fathers and housekeepers there. And so within the context of that gathering, there were people from various cultures. Now, back in the early 20th century, a gentleman by the name of Charles Leland, who was a brilliant, one of, if not the most brilliant folklorist of the modern era, certainly one of the most brilliant folklorists, went to Tuscany. And he encountered somebody who said that she was a practitioner of Italian witchcraft. Now, we'll put a pin in that first. I can tell you from experience that practitioners of the craft neither identify in Italy as witches, nor do we talk with outsiders about our practice. So if in fact he met somebody who said that that's what they were, that they practiced witchcraft, maybe he earned her confidence, maybe he earned her trust, then the first thing we need to understand is that when she would say, okay, so I'm going to invite you to a gathering so you can actually see witches in action, or whatever it was that Magdalena was supposed to have said, she would have never invited him to a gathering of some sort of ritual. She would have invited him to the old religion, the vecchia religione. And so by going to that gathering of the old religion, what Charles Leland was seeing was not witchcraft in practice. He was seeing the old religion in practice, and that there were witches who were present, and that the context of that liturgical celebration, that gathering, that ritual, was a celebration of the god and goddess Diana and Dianus, or Diana and Lucifer, who are, according to legend, said to have given birth. They were brother and sister who were intimate sexually and gave birth to the first human witch, Aradia. Now, Leland would have left there without understanding the Italian culture well enough, without understanding witchcraft well enough, without understanding what just happened to him, and he would have interpreted that gathering as being a gathering of witches, just like that person from outer space that came to the Catholic Church might have encountered nuns and then immediately left and said, aha, Catholic churches are places where nuns gather. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So we've got a comment here. I'm going to go ahead. One of our users. By the way, if it's showing up as Facebook user, if you click on the permissions that it asks for underneath this post, your name will show up if you would like. I had a crisis in faith a couple years ago. Hold on, I got to put my glasses on. But I didn't insult anyone else's belief. Heck, if anything, I'm jealous that they have that relationship. Yeah, exactly. There's no reason to attack somebody's beliefs simply because they're not our own. And yes, and my friend here says, so the spark comes from within. Indeed, it does. So so that's the first thing. So when I say that that within Italy, the practice of the craft has nothing to do with the old religion, it's because I know that for a fact. It's because my experience has been that I know that as a fact, and I spent 20 years researching the various regions within Italy and the differences, and so that brings us to sort of the bridge between that first group and second group, and that is understanding language. Now, the first misconception that exists out there is that there is a single language in all of Italy, and it's called Italian, and that is the language of Italy, just like English is the predominant language in the United States. And that is false. That Italian exists as a separate language that is spoken by all of Italy. All the residents of Italy speak Italian. There are actually at least 17 to as many as 40 different dialectic languages, not just dialects, but languages within Italy. And so there are different cultures within Italy, and there are different regions that have different practices and traditions. And even within those regions, there may be differences in the practice, because witchcraft in Italy is largely folk magic or animistic in its nature, very similar to what we would find in the Caribbean with voodoo, or in the Appalachians with hoodoo. And so so there are traditions and practices that vary from family to family, or region to region, or town to town. And so we come to the word stregoneria, which is the word for witchcraft in general Italian. Now, in the various regions, you may be called a fattucchiero, you may be called a masca, you may be called a talamasca, a strega or stregon mago, but the general word for the practice itself of witchcraft is stregoneria. On some of my videos, just so people understand why, it's just gotten so tiresome to try and do it, and it still didn't fix the problem. You'll hear me say stregoneria, which is the Spanish pronunciation of the word. We did that because when you say stregoneria, the artificial intelligence that does the closed captioning on YouTube will interpret that word, since most of what I'm saying is in English, as stray gonorrhea. So I thought I was going to get around that that algorithm and get them to actually put a word in parentheses. It doesn't work that way. But so just so that you know the difference between why I'm using a Spanish pronunciation in some of my videos and why I'm calling it Strega in the others, understand that that's the reason why. So Strega doesn't refer, as we would in the United States perhaps, or Britain, we refer to Wicca, or Gardnerian magic or Alexandrian magic. Those are specific traditions. The Cabot tradition is a specific tradition. Stregoneria is simply the Italian word for witchcraft. And so when we're talking about, when I teach Stregoneria, I'm teaching Italian witchcraft. But I'm teaching something that's a little bit different because it's both the tradition that I come from. So it's my hereditary tradition of Italian witchcraft, as I've practiced it for now more than 50 years. But it also incorporates some of what I've learned from other regions, from other families, from other parts of Italy, other traditions, what I've made the decision to do. Because in our tradition, in our family tradition, you don't begin teaching publicly until you're 50. And there are specific reasons for that we could go into in a different video. It was my decision when I turned 50 that I wouldn't teach my family's tradition alone, because there are some things that are meant to be kept private, but that I would take from all of these other traditions. And just as at one time the practice of the craft was culturally relevant, this is the problem that I have. This is why I'm not a pagan. This is why I don't practice pop culture witchcraft in any of its manifestations, particularly in Britain and in the United States. I feel that the craft needs to be culturally relevant. And so in order to make that culturally relevant, I took what was passed down from antiquity. I took what was passed down through family members and through oral tradition and through ancient books that were entrusted to my care. And I combined those with conversations I would have with the men in our family about the Hermetic tradition, Hermeticism, about my, with my background in New Thought philosophy, with my background in Zen Buddhism and esoteric Buddhism. And what I've tried to present is, by taking some of the concepts from those philosophies and using them as the lens through which I interpret the Italian practice, I tried to present something that was culturally relevant. So for some families, I'm very clear about the fact that there was no discussion, and that word should be underlined in your mind. There was no discussion about the magic that took place in the kitchen. But to the person who ridiculed the video that I did on the magic of why we eat certain foods on certain days of the week, and how making the gravy on Sunday was a magical practice, you don't have a right. You can say that you've never heard that before, and that's perfectly valid. You can say that you don't believe that, and that too is perfectly valid. But if you think that you can be an arrogant enough asshole to comment on my video and say that that doesn't exist, that I'm making that up, or that's something that's only Italian American, well, then you're just showing yourself to be an ignoramus, because that is the tradition as I received it. And it is the tradition that I saw duplicated throughout all of Southern Italy. Now, I did not see that same practice in Northern Italy, in the regions of the North, but I did see that in Southern Italy. So when I'm teaching, first of all, I'm not looking for guru to be a guru for anyone. I'm not looking to be a pop culture person. When somebody takes my class, they're not called the Salvato witches. We don't have special little costumes. We don't dress in period clothing. They don't get a certificate or a diploma or a patch. All they've done is taken the class in which I've shared my tradition with them in the hopes that it inspires them to find the path that's uniquely theirs. And so when I'm teaching from my experience. and nothing that anyone can say will invalidate my experience. Now, there are pretentious queens who have their YouTube videos, YouTube shows, who put on conventions and conferences, and now in the pandemic world, virtual conferences, who like to get on YouTube with their pretentious accents, and say that if you're not worshiping the goddess Diana, you're not really a witch, or to make other kind of absurd pronouncements. And I'm not going to waste my time or energy or yours by addressing that kind of nonsense. Those people are people who have absolutely no real experience in the real world with real witchcraft. They may have studied Alexandrian magic, or the Cabot tradition, or the Gardnerian tradition. I don't know. They may have academic backgrounds and understand the academics of it all, but if they practiced in the real world, they would know that the founders of the very traditions they claim to be affiliated with would never, ever make such absurd statements. But these are people whose lives are filled with drama. These are people whose lives are filled with moments of chaos, one fight, one battle on Facebook after another. And so if Betty Blondie and Uncle Fester and all of the others want to continue to have their fights on YouTube, they could take their fights somewhere else, because they're going to be ignored on my channel. And I'm not going to address any of that nonsense. But we say that they tie witchcraft with divinities, always asking students to pray. They don't give an option. And yeah, that's exactly the point. In traditions that bear people's names, and there's certainly nothing wrong with those traditions, Alex Sanders and Gerald Gardner and so forth, who create traditions of witchcraft, of religious witchcraft, who teach people this is what you do, this is the process, this is what we believe. They're essentially starting religions. It has really very little to do with the practice of witchcraft. It's usually ceremonial magic. It's usually the difference would be what I consider to be one of the most brilliant jobs of taking the combination of religion and the craft, and making it truly relevant to the modern world. And that would be people like Laurie Cabot and Christopher Penczak and Devin Hunter and his family, who create these traditions that are living traditions that become culturally relevant. And they become culturally relevant because they say, this is where we come from. This is what we believe. So there is a religious aspect to our practice. But you have to find the path that works for you. And I think that makes all the difference in the world. It's what I wanted to be able to offer as a response to the people who think it's cute to post hateful comments on people's YouTube channels, rather than providing substance and engaging in an actual conversation. And so I hope that that's been helpful. Now, to that end, we do have what we call the Inner Alchemy Mystery School. And the Mystery School is not a place where we teach people what to believe. It is not a place where we teach religion. It is not a place where we teach, where you graduate and you become an inner alchemy witch, for example. Instead, it's a collective. It's a place where at the moment we have 5 different teachers from different traditions, who share the wealth of knowledge and the mysteries and their practice as it was transmitted to them. And they share that with students through classes. And people join the Inner Alchemy Mystery School. They join the collective. It's a private social network, so they get all of the features and benefits of being in a social network. At the same time, they are free to take any or all of the classes, and there are new classes added every single month by each one of the faculty members. And every 6 months or so, we add new faculty members, so that there's constant, there's fresh thought and fresh perspectives that are added. And so we create that, again, not because we want people to be our followers, not because we're looking for groupies, but because we're hoping to inspire the next generation to find the path that's uniquely theirs. So when I do videos, and you see there's some of my videos on Strega that are public, there is also a 26-week course that I teach within the Inner Alchemy Mystery School that is private. And within the context of that course, there are, more than 50 hours worth of teachings. And what I do in that course is help people to discover and unlock the DNA mysteries that exist within themselves, unlock some of the memories, unlock some of the traditions that may have been hiding in plain sight in their families. But I'm always doing it by sharing my perspective, sharing my experience and what I've experienced over 50 years, and hoping that it inspires them to dig a little bit deeper and find the path that works for them. So to the people who absurdly say that I do this to get rich, well, if I were doing it to get rich, I would be doing like so many others out there, charging $600 and $700 and $800 for a class that gives you essentially nothing. Instead, what I'm doing is I've created a community at a nominal fee that people pay $49 a month to be part of this community and have access to more than 5 hours of 5 different lectures, 5 different courses on a monthly basis with some of the faculty members. But I created a platform, and the only reason we charge for it is because I'm not independently wealthy, and I do this to recoup some of the investment that I've made into the platform and into the materials themselves. So no, I am not doing this to get rich. There are better ways to get rich, and better ways that I support myself and support my family than by doing it the way that these people imagine. I would suspect that some of them are just upset that, unlike them, I didn't have to get dragged into court every 6 months for some sort of battle. I've never been accused of being a pedophile. I've never had issues with misogynistic language and hate mongering on social media. I didn't have to get into a battle with Lori Bruno and then with Lori Cabot and then go back to Lori Cabot and then Lori Bruno. I didn't have to get involved in all of the nonsense that these pretentious drama queens, who are basically just shopkeepers looking for a way to make a buck and creating a brand by creating drama. Having to be the loudmouth, having to be the princess with the eyeshadow and the bleached hair and the pretend accent and all that crap. I don't have to do that because my objective is not to monetize what I'm sharing. I'm sharing because I want to leave a legacy. As a genderqueer person who doesn't have another means of leaving this legacy, teaching what was so generously taught to me, this is my way of doing that. And so, yeah, I mean, there's no question that there are people in our society, and let me be really clear, I have no problems with a free economy. I have no problems with commercialism, and people who are shopkeepers certainly are I hope that they do well, especially in this economy. And people who have a brand to build and are selling products and are selling books and are selling classes, I'm all for that, and I do everything I can to support that. I'm an author myself, so I understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And I don't have a problem with that. I just want to be sure that we're not lumping, we're not interpreting the classes that I teach or the videos that I put out here freely on YouTube through the lens of maybe bad experiences some of you have had in the past with some maybe more predatory organizations or teachers or individuals. So I wanted to do this video just to kind of clear the air on that, and to invite everybody, if you're interested in taking a look at what we do at the Inner Alchemy Collective, the URL is right, I suck at doing this, right there on the screen. Come and check us out. You get 3 days for free to look around, poke around, see the different courses that we offer. It's an incredible community of people. Some of the most amazing folks in the world there, not just the faculty, but all of the members of the collective who are just come from various cultures and various traditions and various countries, and come together just so that we can have a place without the noise of other social networks, to be able to share and communicate with one another We could have taken this in the direction of having a Patreon channel, and that certainly would have been a very effective way and very good way of doing this. But I wanted to give voice to teachers from other traditions as well, who might not have the technical skills, who might not be as much of a geek as I am, or who may not have the time to be able to set up an entire educational platform like I did. So I made my platform available to all of these other teachers. And so there are some people who teach religious traditions connected to the craft. There are some people who teach African traditional religions, some people in the class who are talking about LGBTQ paganism and mysticism and witchcraft. We'll talk about Catholic conjure in there and some of the traditions that have evolved out of the need to sort of hide our practices beneath the veneer of Catholicism. And then we talk about secular witchcraft, and we talk about Luciferianism. We talk about New Thought philosophy and Hermeticism. And we talk a lot about using plants and the earth as tools and allies and spiritual ancestors from which to begin our own healing journey for ourselves and for the world around us. So I think there's a lot there for everybody. Please come and check us out. It's inneralchemy.online/collective. We'll be doing more of these live broadcasts on a weekly basis as things progress now that we're in the new place. And so I want to thank you. And then at the end of every one of our broadcasts, I'd like to encourage folks with some advice that was given to me by a teacher who I dearly love and dearly miss. He's since left the planet, who has said that the most important thing that we could do is to return to the present moment, because that is where the power is. We can be informed by the past. We can learn from the past, but we can't live there. And worrying about a future that doesn't exist, whose potentialities are limitless, does nothing to help us in this moment. So return to the present moment, fill that moment with gratitude. Because if you can't be grateful for what you've got right now, there's no reason to think you're going to be any happier with more. And always remember, my friends, that the best is yet to come. I truly believe that. I look forward to seeing some more of you. I'm happy to meet some of you that are new here. At the end of our broadcast, we often like to share a little bit of information about the core philosophy of the Inner Alchemy Collective. And that core philosophy is taken from an organization known as the Charter for Compassion. So we encourage you to watch this short public service announcement from the Charter. We don't own the rights to this video. We're using this with permission, however, and we think that it is something for each of us to think about. And I'll see you guys real soon.
The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions,
calling us always to treat all others as we wish to be treated ourselves.
Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures.
To dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put another there.
To honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being.
Treating everybody without exception.
With absolute justice, equity, and respect.
It is also necessary in both public and private life.
To refrain consistently and empathically from inflicting pain.
To act or speak violently out of spite, chauvinism, or self-interest.
To impoverish, exploit, or deny basic rights to anybody.
And to incite hatred by denigrating others, even our enemies.
Is a denial of our common humanity.
We acknowledge that we have failed to live compassionately.
And that some have even increased the sum of human misery in the name of religion.
We therefore call upon all men and women
to restore compassion
to the center of morality and religion.
To return to the ancient principle
that any interpretation of scripture
that breeds violence,
hatred, or disdain
is illegitimate.
To ensure that youth are given accurate and respectful information
about other traditions, religions, and cultures.
To encourage a positive appreciation
of cultural and religious diversity.
To cultivate
an informed empathy
with the suffering of all human beings,
even those
regarded as enemies.
We urgently need to make compassion a clear, luminous, and dynamic force in our polarized world.
Rooted in a principled determination to transcend selfishness.
Compassion can break down political, dogmatic, ideological, and religious boundaries.
Born of our deep interdependence, compassion is essential for human relationships and to a fulfilled humanity.
It is the path to enlightenment and indispensable in the creation of a just economy and a peaceful global community.